Well, it's that time again, that time when we put on our mosquito repellent, paint our faces green, and step into the jungle with our dear friend and Vietnam vet, Joe Stenglein. We're your hosts, Greg, Ken, and I'm Chris, and this is Three Pastors Walk Into a Bar. Yeah, so we're going to embark on a little bit of some nostalgia, and we're going to do this over a period of time. You know, we had kicked around an idea, Ken, about doing a podcast, at least with a friend of mine. We talked about doing a podcast called Lest We Forget. Mm-hmm. And it was about kind of capturing the history of people, you know, because we have a tendency to forget about history and forget about how, you know, people were affected by history and things of that nature. And so, you know, we wanted to start doing something like that in a series for Three Pastors, and we've got a wealth of history in our congregation. And when I say history, I mean like really old people.
Easy, boy. Easy.
If you guys could see Joe's face right now. No, we have some people that have come from some really interesting backgrounds, and you know, tying it all in with, you know, what does it look like to live in a world that is so vastly different now, politically, philosophically, ideologically, than when it was when, you know, you were a kid, you know? And so we got some stuff together, and we want to run through this real quick because it just kind of gives us an idea of how things have changed. And then we'll introduce Joe, and we'll let Joe tell us a little bit about himself. But in 2020, China's GDP was an estimated 14.9 trillion, and the population was 1.4 billion. The U.S. GDP in 2020 was 20.93 billion, and the U.S. population was 29 million. So our GDP was way higher and our population lower. U.S. goods and services trade with China totaled an estimated $615 billion. Exports were $164 billion. Imports were $450 billion. The U.S. goods and services trade deficit with China was about $285 billion between goods coming in and coming out. Foreign investments, the United States, China in the United States, 2020 rocketed from 0.28 billion to 39.64 billion. The United States owes China approximately $1.6 trillion of its over $30 trillion debt now, as of January 2022, repayment of U.S. Treasury securities. China owned 191,000 acres of American farmland worth $1.9 billion as of 2019. And there's been a tenfold expansion of Chinese ownership of farmland in the United States in less than a decade. Total foreign investor control, either through direct ownership or long-term leases, is at 28.3 million acres of land in the United States of America, valued at $52 billion. That's the area about the size of the state of Idaho, or of Ohio, is what is owned by foreign investors. More than 5 million barrels of oil that were released from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve here recently have been diverted to European and Asian nations, including Chinese energy company Sinopec, which Hunter Biden has invested in, coincidentally, instead of U.S. refineries, according to customs data. So instead of it going to U.S. refineries, it's gone over to China, Asian countries. Now, where that is relevant to this conversation is China has been a long-time adversary of the United States of America for a long time. China aided in the Korean War to subdue South Korea in the early 50s. China aided North Vietnam in its war to capture South Vietnam in the 60s and 70s, which is relevant to what we're talking about here with Joe today. And even sending 50,000 troops. In 1979, China turned on Vietnam and fought its own border war. Russian President Nikita Khrushchev has falsely been quoted as having said, "Your children's children will live under communism. You Americans are so gullible. No, you won't accept communism outright, but we will keep feeding you small doses of socialism until you will finally wake up and find you already have communism." We have a society that has changed substantially over the last few decades. And we wanted to kind of get an idea of what it means to a person who actually fought in some of these wars. I mean, like when Vietnam was happening, I mean, Joe was in Vietnam fighting that war against China, basically. And now here we are in this major supportive role for him. So we're going to get into all of that, and we're going to get into a lot of the other kind of details that go into what history has created for us. But Joe, thanks for being here, man. We really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Joe's a good friend, and he's also our leader of our safety team. He's on the finance committee. He's part of the SWAT team, and that's not like tactical team. That's servants with assorted talents, and so they go and mow grass and stuff. And he's part of the new building advisory committee. You know, there's a lot of other things that he's part of, and he's just an integral part of our congregation, and we really enjoy him. So, again, thanks for being with us. So.
It's good to be this involved.
Yeah.
I mean, in something positive like this.
Yeah. Yeah. It does make you, it gives you reason and purpose.
I was looking around at the congregation yesterday at church, and the happiness when they were listening to your sermon about God's message, it was just overwhelming.
Oh, that's
really
awesome.
was. I mean, they were really, really happy.
That's awesome, Joe. Thanks, man. I appreciate that observation. So tell us a little bit about yourself. Where did you grow up? Like, what's life like for Joe as a little child?
I was born and raised Catholic in Waconia, Minnesota, a small farming community, and grew up. We had going to church on a regular basis. Went to Catholic grade school, served Mass, and I never doubted that the Lord Jesus Christ was my Savior, that died on the cross for me, for my sins, and that there was life after life, everlasting. I never doubted that at all. That was the one thing that the Catholics really brought forth. Then I started looking around at some of the things that didn't really make a lot of sense. Like you can't really make a law in the church that will send somebody to hell if they don't agree with it. It seems to me that would that's supposed to be up to God to do that.
Right.
So I gradually drifted away, and started running with my own bunch of cronies, and wound up drinking pretty heavy. And we seemed like we joined the service together, all of us, and right after high school.
That's interesting. You guys all joined together. Did you guys do boot camp together in the whole bit?
No, a lot of guys went into a lot of guys went into the Air Force. A lot of guys went into the Army. Me and another guy decided we were going to sign up for the Marine Corps together, and we went down. I signed up for 4 years, and he signed up on a 6-month reserve. So that pretty much told me what Clyde was all about.
Yeah, right.
So,
you got your girlfriend, you got your motorcycle, you got your...
Yeah. Then I had a girlfriend. There were 3 of us that were really tight, me and Vern and Jane. And I went in the Marine Corps, and when I was gone, Jane and Vern decided to unintentionally. They were good friends. Turned into a romance, and they ended up getting married. So I got a Dear John letter.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
So
man.
said, okay.
Oh, man.
You know, well, it's the way it is. The DI's always told us. It says absence makes the heart grow fonder for somebody else. And so I had that. I says, I got it.
So what caused your little group to all want to join the military all at the same time? Was it patriotism? Was it?
Well,
for you guys?
They were talking about the draft, and so we kind of figured it was inevitable.
Yeah.
So I thought if I'm going to join,
at least have a choice if you sign up.
yeah.
Right?
If my opinion, if I was going to join a force that I was going to fight, I joined with the best force that I knew at the time, which was the Marine Corps.
Mm-hmm.
Other guys said, "Well, I want to serve, but I don't want to take all the risk and everything." So we joined the Air Force, or I joined the Navy, or I joined the Army. So, but it was a thing to do. Our fathers were all World War II vets, so we figured we'd follow in their footsteps.
Just kind of was the natural thing to do.
Yeah. What
do you think happened? I mean, this is a pretty big question, but what do you think happened to the patriotism of people, joining the military because their parents joined the military or whatever? I mean, it's like when I was a kid, my dad was an Army Ranger, and he was in Korea, and I think he did a short stint in Vietnam as well. But I didn't have much of an inkling to join the military, just to follow in my father's footstep, and then maybe that was just like my family. I was close. Like I was ready to go on the bus and go to Montgomery and get my physical. But right before that happened, Bill Clinton took office. And I was always ideological, and I was like, no, I'm not going to have Bill Clinton as my commander-in-chief. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
And so I didn't go. I regret that to this day. I wish I would have got on that bus.
Yeah.
But, it is what it is. Choices are choices. What do you think happened, though? I mean,
well, I don't know. I knew we weren't getting the whole story. I knew Nixon was probably a crook, but I figured he was on our side.
I am not a crook.
Yeah, he said he. He said he wasn't.
Yeah. But I think what happened over time.
But I am a politician.
I think the news media in Korea, I don't know that there was a lot of news coverage of the conflict.
Mm-hmm.
In Vietnam, that all changed, where it seems like the focus of the Vietnam War from the news media was what an American soldier looks like when he's dying, because they're up there with the camera in their face, and that was about the most outrageous thing I can think of, that they didn't even give the man enough time when he was going to die to be at peace. They wanted to make a political statement over that. I think that, and between the the Fondas and the Hollywood people that were kind of respected, kind of looked up at. Thinking about John Wayne, and thinking about all the actors at the time, they started to make statements against it, and I think that did a lot to erode the desire to go into to fight for your country. And the drug culture that grew. I couldn't believe what it was like when I came back between tours. I mean, good grief,
Did you get involved in that, Joe?
Pardon?
Over in Nam? Did you get involved in the drugs?
I smoked pot a couple times.
Okay.
But I inhaled. I did inhale. Yeah. But I got into some stuff that was mixed with something else, because it was a true hallucinogen. I mean,
PCP probably, huh?
I don't know what it was,
Yeah.
but every time I took a hit off of the pipe.
So when you went in the first time and then you came back,
Yeah.
how different was it?
It was completely different. I mean, there was a lot of protesting against the war, and there were guys that had been there that were protesting against it, and I always gave them the right to have their own opinion about it because they were there. But when I took offense when they started to, like the Kerrys, to take apart the whole morale. Should we be there? Should we do? It's not their job to say whether you should be there or not.
Yeah.
Your job is to go in there and do your job.
Yeah.
You know? So.
Yeah. So what did you do over there? What was your MOS?
Well, I started out at boot camp as a crewman on an artillery piece. And when I got to my battery, they were all filled up. They didn't need anybody there, so they transferred my MOS to communications. So I went to wire communication school. Then I went into radio communication school. And along the line, I picked up a 2.5 ton truck. I don't know why I went to these schools. This is go when I went. So my job was radio communications with the idea that I would have the format to direct artillery fire from batteries. They have the grid. Grid's the first thing, and then you got the direction, and then you got the nature target, and then you got what kind of shell you want, whether it's high explosive, smoke, white phosphorus, what kind of fuse, whether you want to go off in the air or on the ground. And you, depending on what your target is, you just went down the checklist and dialed up a artillery battery for them. You know.
Wow. So in that scenario, like a soldier could call for it, like out in the field, or
this is both in the field. If we were out on patrol, usually our nature of targets were automatic weapons fire. Incoming automatic weapons fire. If we were set up in a position, we'd set up night defensive fires, where if we figured we were going to get hit from a certain spot, we'd pre-register some artillery for that spot. So we wouldn't have to go through the time of the whole mission. Mm-hmm. We'd just say concentration Charlie 104. And
so what kind of range did the artillery you were working with have? Because
I'm
got to be a
guessing
long way.
I'm guessing it was 7 miles plus, something like that. I'm not really sure how far.
7 miles.
Yeah.
You could hit a target at 7 miles with those things?
It depends on on the FO. If you have their grid right, the guns are registered at pre-registered positions, and that are surveyed in. So the guns are set up on those registrations, and from there they just shift to different spots.
That's amazing.
It's like sighting in a rifle, right?
Yeah. Yeah. They had in meteorology, they'd have and calculate how high the rounds would have to go. Mm-hmm. Meteorology would give winds 3, 6, and 9,000 feet, and they just say this is going to affect the artillery piece the round this much. And so they'd calculate it all in, and they're pretty darn good.
Wow, that's amazing.
Pretty darn good.
Did you ever encounter a time where you were potentially saving a platoon's life or a patrol's life in a firefight?
When we got into firefights, yeah. My job was to get down and to call artillery in, and they'd return fire. But then what we do when the rounds started coming in, they disappeared. Either they took off running or they got crawled in their holes or whatever they did. And it was all that was the most satisfying part of the job was when we were getting the living crap shot out of us to call artillery in and
everything stopped. Yeah.
That's right.
So when they were calling for your help, it was hitting the fan big time.
Yeah.
And you were the hero of the day.
Yeah.
From your radio truck.
You were out with them on patrol?
Pardon?
Were you out on it with them on patrol?
Oh yeah. Yeah. We weren't supposed to go out with less than a platoon, but we go out with squads.
How many's in a platoon?
30.
30.
There's maybe 13 to 15 in the squad, reinforced squad with machine gunner and rockets and artillery. there was two of us. Two of us were assigned to an FO team, and we got the idea real quick that the chances of one of us getting hit was pretty good. So, so we cross-trained each other. So I'd teach the FO radio procedure and the frequency and the authentication list, and he'd teach me the ins and outs of directing artillery and map reading and how to use the M2 compass.
Wow, it's amazing.
And sure enough, one night we were on patrol, and the point tripped a wire, killed him, hit two guys behind him, missed me, and hit my FO who was behind me. He had $1 million wound. He got a little piece about the size of a coffee can metal in his knee. So he couldn't walk, right? He couldn't stay out on patrol. So he gave me the map and the compass, and they flew him out.
So that's the passport home.
That's it.
Wound right there, huh?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, out of the military. It depends if they had more than 6 months to serve left, then they'd stay back. If they had less than 6 months, then they probably would go back stateside.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What was that like when they tripped that wire? I mean, can you recall in your head like what?
Oh, I know the instant he shot it. He tripped it. There was a bunch of sparks. Looked like spark glowing. Was probably glowing metal about that big around all over the place, and it was from total quiet to instant chaos. So everybody got down because we didn't know if they were going to get hit after that. Because usually if you chip a wire, then they'll come and they'll overrun the position. So we got down, and I didn't have anybody to I couldn't see anything other than I heard the screams of the gunny that got hit, and the medic went up there and says he's dead. Then they had the two other guys. They were bandaging them up. And Al was sitting there grinning like a Cheshire cat because he knew that he was out,
Wow.
And it the medevacs came in. They hauled everybody out, and we continued.
Just keep going on patrol.
A little slower, a little bit more eyes on a swivel.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Yeah.
They a new point come in, and he was a little more cautious.
I bet he was a little shook up.
Did the patrols get kind of lazy after a while? After going out a few times, and then it's just like becomes routine, and then you.
I don't know that I would say that. I don't know that it got routine because once you left your perimeter, it was all on. I was fortunate enough to where I could walk in the footsteps of somebody ahead of me, so I didn't have to worry about tripping anything. All I had to do was make sure I stayed back far enough from him, so if somebody else tripped it, distance is a friend in that.
Yeah.
So, Joe, how many movies about Vietnam have you seen? All of them?
I don't know about all of them. I watched Platoon.
What's the most realistic?
There's parts of all of them have some realism in, but then they're twisted.
Mm-hmm.
Platoon was good in some parts. Then they overemphasize some of the negative stuff, some of the negative aspects in Vietnam.
Like the ethical things that were taking place. Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you ever find yourself in a situation like that where you were having to make really hard ethical decisions?
It was all cut and dried. If I got shot at, I blew it up.
Yeah.
If we got shot at, we blew it up. If I had targets, the way they go,
Yeah. So there wasn't a lot of these opportunities where you were like in some person's house and you had like a woman and a child there and you were having to consider whether or not, are torn about whether they were Viet Cong or not. I mean, it was pretty simple, cut and dry kind of.
If you suspected anybody, just send them off to interrogation. We had this one, our interpreter was North Vietnamese Chu Hoi. He came back, and they thought that Bai was a spy. So they killed his family, burned his house down, and that really ticked him off, right?
I can't imagine why.
So he went in and turned himself in. He walked into the guard shack, or one of the not the guard shack, one of the MP posts around the Air Force base, and he was sitting there. The guy and the MP inside was sleeping, so Boy was sitting there with his AK across his lap, waving his two white little slip of paper that picked up.
I'm here.
And when the guy woke up, so he went and he was our interpreter. So he picked up a suspect on one patrol. We were out for about a 4-hour hump, and he picked up a suspect, and he beat that poor sucker. He'd take his rifle and jam him in the ribs, and he'd drag him through every sticker bush and through every mucky.
It's not like he had an axe to grind, right?
Yeah. And 4 hours later, he says, okay, you can go home. I don't think you.
Wow.
And that was daily life. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Where were you at when the fall of Saigon happened?
Oh, I was out already.
Oh, you were already out?
I got hit on the 27th of January in 1968 when Saigon fell. It was like 75 or something like that.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
So tell us about that. You got hit?
Oh, yeah. I got hit with artillery. We had, we went on a flotilla. And the flotilla was they took our battalion, put it on ships, and we sailed up and down the coast. And if somebody got hit, or was going to get overrun, or the problem was there, they'd left us in, and we'd bail them out, right? So it was odd because I was in the rear area, but in the battalion headquarters, and on the 27th of January in 1968, and all of a sudden we had artillery rounds going off out in the middle of no place, you know? And I was monitoring our conduct of fire net, and it was quiet. I thought, what's this, a naval gunfire or something or what, you know? So come to find out that the next volleys, they went way over the top of us, and they backed the other way on the other side of us. And it didn't dawn on me because we never really used that procedure that we were bracketed. So the third set of rounds came in, and it was right on top of us.
Oh, my.
And so they'd go here, and then they'd go here and split the difference, and down they'd come. And we were a good target. We had all kinds. We had armor with us. We had a 4-deuce battery. We had a battalion command post. So it was a sweet target. And so the time that the rounds started to go off, or started to come in, you could hear the guns go off first, and then you could hear the rounds coming in. You had maybe 2 or 3 seconds before they landed that you could start hearing them. So I scrambled, and I wound up in this little drainage ditch about 8 to 10 inches deep, right? And the rounds that hit me landed about 2.5 steps away from me, and most of it blew over the top. But it took out half my right ankle, got me behind both knees, perforated my left eardrum, and I got to say that within 20 minutes I was on a helicopter going back to medical care. They set up a dirty surgery ward on one of the decks of their helicopter platform, and they had 782 gear stacked up. That was 68 TIP, the initial 68 TIP, and there was a lot of casualties.
So, switching gears a little bit, do you feel like when after you came back, do you feel like you had a positive difference over there, or you made a positive difference anywhere?
I went back on my second tour not because I believed that the government was right and that we should be there. I went back because of the people. People are people all over the world, no matter what country they're in. The farmer, the down to earth, blue collar or people are valuable, basically good people, and they were really caught by the North Vietnamese forces. They come in and they torture them. They'd haul people out and they'd kill them. I came back there because I wanted to make a difference for them. Maybe if I got 3 or 4 more people, some of them would be okay.
Was your second tour after you were wounded?
No.
No. Okay, that ended your career there.
That was it.
Okay.
Yeah. So you really weren't like considering what we were doing there politically. You were just like, there are people over there, they're in trouble. I need to do what I can to help.
That's right. That's pretty much where I was coming from.
Yeah. Did they? I mean, when these people you encountered, the Vietnamese people, how did they react to you guys?
Well, first of all, they were real cautious, but then you give them a cigarette or make some friends, and then they're really friendly. But they were caught. They were caught in between these two forces. Like when we were there, they were friends with us. When we left, the Viet Cong came in. They were friends with him because it was their life that they were dealing with. But I believe I believe that most of them didn't want the communist takeover because they saw the obvious difference. Viet Cong come in and they'd interrogate the village higher ups. Then if they didn't like what they heard, they just shot them. That was the end. So they knew that we were definitely the lesser of two evils.
It's very much an ideological war, not a resource war, a political war.
Wasn't resources. Basically, I think the two major religions were Buddhism and Catholicism. And I think that played a big part in influencing the people, people's ideas.
There was a lot of Catholicism in Vietnam.
There was some, yeah.
That's interesting. So you get wounded on the flotilla. You get helicoptered out. They take you back stateside, I'm guessing, because
I spent 3 days I spent 2 days in Da Nang before I got airlifted to the Princeton helicopter platform. Spent 3 days on the helicopter platform, then 2 weeks in the Army hospital in Japan, and then over the polar ice cap to Scott Air Force Base, and then into Great Lakes Naval Hospital from there.
Did you tell them, hey, quit flying me around, I'm hurting?
No, I didn't really care because I was so loaded.
You were loaded with morphine?
Yeah.
This is great. I should have got wounded earlier.
Yeah.
So we were looking at a bunch of your photos, and there's a series of them there with you in a hospital bed with your leg up and all bandaged up. That was in stateside, right?
That was in Great Lakes. Yeah.
Okay, so that was your homecome was straight to a hospital bed, and looks like you had family with you.
Well, they must have tried about 8 skin grafts to cover up the hole, and none of them would take because there wasn't enough flesh in there for the skin to take on. So they had to do a full thickness graft to put over the wound so that it would have something so that it would cover
hold
it up.
on to.
Yeah.
Wow.
In order to do that, they raised the tube of my stomach, attached it here, and raised the flesh that they were going to put over the wound below that tube, and the flesh was getting nutrition through my arm, through the tube, into that graft, and then they took that and stuck it to my ankle. What you saw was I was in traction because they had this leg casted, this arm casted. They were both pinned together so they couldn't move, and then that was attached to my ankle. And after a month or so, they cut it loose, and luckily it took.
That must have been weird.
It was weird, but again, I didn't really care.
Yeah, morphine will do that for you.
That's right, Percodan and Toluene, and
yeah, that's a trip. So when you got out of the hospital, what was it? What was the attitude of the country towards you? Did you feel like you were welcome back, or was it like the classic, where you see the Vietnam veteran like Rambo?
Yeah.
You come back and people despise you and that kind of thing.
In our town, our community, it simply wasn't talked about. They know that the soldiers coming back. There was a sore subject with them, and they.
When was this? What year?
I got out in 70. I got discharged. No, January 68. I got discharged from the hospital.
68.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was in the hospital from the.
Where were you at in 68, Greg?
Junior in high school.
You were a junior in high school?
Yep. I didn't care about the Vietnam War. But I did care about the drugs.
Yeah, you were just thinking about drugs and girls. Pretty much. That's what it boils down to. So meanwhile, you're in the hospital with your leg up in traction, and you're like almost died for your country.
Yeah.
For guys to sit in junior high school smoking pot and chasing girls around. Does that make you feel better?
I was in high school.
Yeah. I had a definite attitude against hippies, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not favorable, I'm guessing.
No.
I remember being a kid and sitting in front of the black and white television back then, and the major newscasters coming on. That was always the beginning of the show.
So Walter Cronkite.
Here's how many men died in Vietnam today.
Yeah.
And that was just part of American life back then. It was just this ongoing deal.
That helped swing the attitude against the war. I mean, a continual barrage of the negative parts of the war.
There was never a sense that we were succeeding over there.
Was it in large
progress? It was just this ongoing, like a virus.
Ongoing slaughter of American soldiers.
It was. Do you think? I mean, I think I'm getting the sense that you feel like the media had a large part in changing the political course of our country and our ideological course in our country during the Vietnam War.
Yeah, I don't know. I think the politicians do what they do best. They cover their tails as far as keeping their jobs. I think the media did a lot to swing the attitude of the American people.
My wife and I watched a documentary on Vietnam. This last year sometime, I think, and the number of factions within the war was really amazing to us. We had no clue all the different countries, all the different military regimes that were involved in that. It wasn't us and them.
No.
It was us and everybody else.
Yeah, Australians, South Koreans.
Yeah, and it was all politically motivated.
Yeah.
So did you see that? Did you run into that?
No, I don't know. What motivated other countries, to send troops to this, other than the fact that we were in there because we wanted to support, pick up France's flag, because when they got kicked out. So we, rather than to help Ho Chi Minh, which he came and asked for us for help, we said no. We're sticking with France, and we're picking up because they were our allies. And I think a lot of that our allies from World War II carried on with the country's decision to do that.
Mm-hmm. How did you feel at that time with sympathizers towards communism in America here back home when you came back? Did you hear any of that? Did that?
I knew it was there, but like I say, when they never really confronted me about it. If they had opinions about it that were different, they never mentioned anything to me about it.
So I was looking at the numbers, and we're kind of shift gears again. The numbers of Vietnamese soldiers and civilians killed during the Vietnam War ranges widely from 966,000 to almost 3 million. Some 275,000 to 310,000 Cambodians, anywhere between 20,000 to 62,000 Laotians, and 58,000 U.S. service members died in that conflict. And a further 1,626 still remain missing in action. Comparing that to military deaths in today's day and age, like there were 2,448 United States military deaths in the 20-year war in Afghanistan.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think when you hear that? You know, I mean, it's like the difference between military doctrine when you were serving and military doctrine now seems to have like cut down on casualties so significantly.
I don't think that it's military doctrine that does that. I think it's improved medical treatment for battlefield casualties. That's the biggest thing. And as far as as far as church shootings, as far as civilian shootings here, that's the biggest thing. It was stopping the bleeding. A lot of the Sandy Hook people that died there bled out because nobody knew this. Take your T-shirt and stuff it in there, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
I think our medical, ability to get the battlefield casualties into some significant medical treatment is a big part of that.
Yeah.
Because these people now, the guys that are going like in Afghanistan, I mean, these IEDs, they will blow everything out, arms, legs, the whole thing, and you got to do something really, really fast.
Yeah. So battlefield medicine is way better now.
Way better.
Yeah.
Way better.
That's something because like when you were in, if you got your leg blown off out in the field, there's a high likelihood that you're just not going to make it, huh?
Well, you could, as far as that concerned, the tourniquets, people, you can, something like that, you can have a tourniquet. But as far as head injuries, concussions, that improved a lot, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it was because you lose a leg. If you got a doctor that can slap a tourniquet on there, like I say, I was lucky. 20 minutes after I got hit, I was on a helicopter back to the ship. Some people later on in the TET, Jack, the guy I met in the hospital, got shrapnel in his eyes, and it was 3 days before they could get even to get him any medical attention at all.
Mm.
Well,
So he was. It took them a lot longer to get him out.
Wow. So have you ever been to like the Vietnam Memorial? Have you ever seen any of that kind of stuff? Would you go?
I don't know. I think so. Yeah. If it came through, I'd go. Yeah.
How do you think you'd react if you walked by all those names?
Oh, I don't know. All the names. I'd look more towards if people that I knew, if they made it.
Mm-hmm.
I got a book on a Purple Heart book. It's about that thick, from World War II, Korea, Vietnam, and a list of all of the Purple Heart recipients. And so I going through and I'd see some of the radio operators that I knew that weren't in it. So I thought, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They made it out.
They finally made it. Being as dumb as he was, he made it.
Well, I remember visiting the Vietnam Memorial, and I did not expect what happened when I got there. I just thought, well, I'll just go look at this. It's just this black marble wall with all these names on it. And when I got up there and I just saw that, just the immenseness of all of those names, it just rocked me. It's like, and I barely missed the draft for Vietnam right at the very end. You were closer than I was, probably right, Greg. And I thought, man, there, but for the grace of God, go I could be a name on this wall.
Yeah, I wasn't even born yet.
yeah, I had friends that went to Nam. I was second year lottery. My number was 247. I never even got called for a physical. So I didn't know the Lord at that time, but I think I was thanking him for that.
That's right.
Yeah.
I had friends that were side gunners on helicopters, and I lost a few friends over there. So, yeah, it's impactful. And, talking about the wall, I have never been there, but I have seen pictures of it, which, caused me to think about my friends that were killed and people that I knew.
You don't really realize, the enormity of the casualties until you see them all in one spot.
Yeah.
Every one of them.
I mean, even saying a number of 58,000, it's just like just saying the
What
number doesn't really.
I can't imagine that.
Yeah. But I remember when we took a trip to Washington, D.C., and we walked along that wall, there were a couple of monuments that really affected me deeply, and that was one of them. Yeah. You know, even as a young man, you know, I mean, I was a teenager at that point, and, you know, walking down that wall, you could take your hand and you can rub it across, and you could feel all the indentations. It's a very tactile experience.
Yeah.
And understanding that each one of them indentations is a person.
Sure. You see
that
people
lost
that
their
are
lives.
tracing the name on.
I think what would impact me most would be the mementos that people leave.
Yeah,
family members leave to that person.
Yeah.
You know, maybe like a pair of boots or a favorite this or a favorite that. You know.
Yeah, that's rough. So when you look back, are you proud of what you did over there?
Yeah. Yeah. I'd do it again.
Would you?
I mean, not at 75, but at 17, I'd do it again.
I'd like to see you do it at 75. That'd be funny.
I think he'd make a great general.
Things would be a little different.
Yeah, he'd have to have some hearing aids for sure, because people would ask him questions, and everybody knows that if you talk to Joe, you just got to talk really loud.
Yeah.
Yeah, his headphones are turned up super high. Yeah.
So, any residual effects from your wounds?
Arthritis, my ankle's sore.
Yeah.
Tinnitus, both ears. Prostate cancer, type 2 diabetes, presumptive Agent Orange. I don't really notice. The only thing I notice is just aches and pains when the weather changes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Might be because you're 75 too.
Could be because I'm 75.
Yeah, that's a likelihood.
Well, thank you for your service.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, for
You're
sure.
welcome. Yeah.
For sure. How do you, in light of the fact that, you know, it was China that was involved in the Vietnam War, and you were over there and you saw firsthand what socialism and communism can do to a people, how do you feel about our country's growing dependence on China?
I think it's a mistake, definitely. I think somebody's got their head in the clouds, because what I trust is that the political winds are going to change. That's the one thing I thought if I was in another country assessing the United States, looking at the present administration, I says, what faith would I have in that country? The only thing that I would say is that it wasn't this way 2 years ago. We were under different leadership. A country that leadership changes every 4 years got to be a hard one to trust and to snuggle up to. You know.
Yeah.
I mean, because knowing that whatever you do, in 2 years or 4 years, it could all change.
Mm-hmm.
That's the biggest tragedy. I think one of the biggest tragedies in Vietnam was after we left, the slaughter of the Cambodians and the killing fields. Mm-hmm. I mean, that is just graves of mass amount of people, you know.
Yeah.
And they trusted us.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
We abandoned them too.
And that's when we bailed out.
Yeah.
We were done.
Yeah.
Politically, we were done. Is that kind of how you felt about Afghanistan? How did you feel about Afghanistan when we pulled out of Afghanistan?
I thought it was about time.
Yeah.
You know, you're not going to change those. You're not going to. There's no winning in Afghanistan. Mm-hmm. It's like you're trying to change a Muslim ideology is what you're trying to do, and it ain't going to happen. You know, it ain't going to happen.
How do you feel about how it was done?
It was just a disaster. It was a complete, total disaster.
Yeah. How would you have done it?
I would have done like Trump would have done. Gradually keep a base there and gradually withdraw, knowing that it's going to, we're probably going to have a base there to keep an eye on things and definitely keep the terrorists from getting our weapons and our technology, which they don't know what to do with anyway, so they'll probably pipe it off to China. But that's the thing; it can change so fast. Technology can change so fast. Our authentication, we had a list of if you had to authenticate a radio transmission, you'd say authenticate Whiskey Bravo, and they'd come back and say Alpha Mike, and you have pieces of paper and say that those 2 letter combinations were from our system. And that's a legit. You could trust that transmission. If they couldn't authenticate it, you'd disregard the message. That kind of technology, that idea. I mean, it changes so darn fast.
Yeah.
We had our radios had scramblers to where you could put 2 radios together, one on the scrambler and the other one not. And you could send a message on the same frequency, send a message from one radio, and it wouldn't even register as a message on the other one. They were sitting right next to each other. So they encrypted that message enough to, and that's 60, 65, 64, So
Things have changed.
yeah,
Things change rapidly, for sure.
Yeah.
So, what do you think about the rise of communism? I mean, is that something that we need to be concerned about? Rise of socialism and communism, and what could we do to stem that tide? I mean, do you think that we'll end up having to go to war?
I don't know that as a country we go to war against communism because everybody's got the big button, It's the 2 major countries going at it. I think what you'll find is stuff like in the Ukraine or a limited support of different countries for other countries. Maybe I don't know that China would ever come out and take on Taiwan or try to take over Taiwan. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. That's up to God. I think it's a lot of it's in His hand. All I can do is keep my shooting skills sharp.
So
and not forget what I learned in Vietnam.
Yeah. So you have, let's just put out a hypothetical. You have sitting in front of you a liberal arts degree major that's just come out of the local, college, and they have lofty ideas of a socialist utopia, where everybody has equal pay, everybody has a job to do, everybody's, got food on their table, and that, we all are sharing equal levels of wealth. What would you say to that person to convince them that what you're thinking about is wrong?
I would quote an article from the Epoch Times. They said, list me 10 countries where the socialism, communism worked and didn't end up to some hellscape where you had to eat your dog. Name them. I can think of Star Trek.
Yeah.
I can think of maybe the Muppets, or things like that. But every other country, to where things didn't collapse and like I say, end up where you didn't have to eat your dog. Name them.
Yeah.
A lot of death.
Yeah.
Lots of death.
Lots of death and poverty, equal levels of poverty, except for the people at the very top.
Yeah.
And the thing that they are opposed to, the upper 2% or whatever, upper 10% or whatever they hate the most, that's going to be the people that end up with everything, while all of us have nothing.
No.
And I don't understand how they cannot see that. It must be frustrating as a guy who has gone over and fought for other people's freedoms to see people so readily willing to just surrender theirs. I mean, how does that make you feel?
I cannot imagine how people can be so stupid.
Yeah.
You know, they're not thinkers. They don't look deeper than what people tell them. They'll believe anything that they're told. And I just say, well, hope that works out for you. You know.
Yeah.
Do you think we're experiencing that in this country then?
Say that again?
Do you think we're experiencing that in this country where people are just, going with what they're told?
This whole woke deal
Mm-hmm.
and the breakdown of morality in schools, that's a big thing. Yeah.
It's tough, man.
Yep.
It's a crazy world that we live in.
Yes, it is.
It's so different than when you were a kid. Like, what things, like, what are some of the major things like you see in our society compared to when you were, like, say, even pre-Vietnam?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what are some of the things that you look at back then that you think, wow, why did we lose that? We were so much better with that idea.
Yeah. Christianity. But I mean, you look back when I was growing up, everybody went dressed up and went to church on Sunday. Everybody had respect for other people's property. I mean, divorce was looked down on. Abortion was almost, if you had an abortion, you sure didn't say much of anything to anybody about it. You kept it on the down low.
Yeah, you certainly weren't going through the streets bragging about it.
No,
Yeah.
you wouldn't say, I'm going to go out and get pregnant just so I can abort my baby. That kind of crap,
Yeah.
And it's been the whole, the quality of life. I mean, it's hard to say the dollar's worse off now than it was before, because back then a dollar was worth more. Now they've been whittling away at the value of our dollar. So naturally it's going to cost more dollars. Dollars, vary. You know.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when you don't base it on anything.
That's
You have
changed.
a Federal Reserve, what do you have when there's a Federal Reserve that isn't federal and there's no reserve?
Mm-hmm.
You've
Yeah.
got a laundering company is what you got.
Yeah. Yeah. In essence. Yep. Yep. Just create more money. Just
Yeah.
print it up.
Yeah.
Just print it up. Yeah. So, that's kind of like my main thing that I want to kind of go away with is what hurts your heart the most about the society that we live in today. And I know you said, if we could have Christianity, then we would all be better off if we could all be, tied to something greater than ourselves. So what's the thing that breaks your heart the most when you see it in our society today?
I say about the acceptance of abortion. I mean, to me, that's just totally unbelievable that somebody could look at a baby and see the looks on his face and watch it. When they abort it, if they poke a needle, it's cringe away from it, and to have him move his hands and to say that's not a life, that person needs to go to. Needs to be shot. Basically, what it is, because there's no arguing with that. You talk about a reprobate mind that the Bible talks about. That's it.
Yeah, there's just no humanity in it.
No.
None.
Is there any hope? Is there any
course
hope
there
for the world?
Of course there is. God's in charge.
What do you think the answer is?
Well, I'm encouraged by the groups like the not 611, a Jonah Project
Mm-hmm.
that helped people out of slavery. That's another thing that gets me. The hope is a return to a moral leadership. That the small elections, that there's a gradual shift in the power base away from people that are liberal or progressive towards a more solid Christian leadership. That's the only way out. That's the only way out to change the ideology, bring it back to a more Christian way of living and belief system.
It's been a long journey, Joe.
Yeah,
From teenage Joe to Joe getting drunk with his buddies and then joining the military and then your Vietnam stint, and then you had the time period after Vietnam where you're riding your motorcycle, and we saw the pictures of middle-aged Joe Stenglein
on a sailboat?
on his motorcycle.
Oh,
We
on the
did see the sailboat too. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you came back from Vietnam and you experienced a really full life.
Yeah.
It seems like
After I sobered up.
Yeah. Tell us about that. Like, what was the adventure of sobering up like, and how bad off were you?
Oh, I don't know that I got sober when I was 28, and I don't know that I'd have lived to be 30. It was a DUI. They said, okay, you got 30 days in treatment, or you got 90 days in the workhouse. What do you want? And I says, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure this one out. So I said, I'll go into treatment, write it out, and go about my life after it's all over. Well, I found out that there was some reason, some cause that I had better sober up. And so then...
what was that? What was the cause? What was the reason you needed to sober up?
Mostly my kids. I had 2 kids. When I got hit in Vietnam, I was dying, and I says, I can't die yet. I need to have kids. And I exerted all my force to stop my dying process, and I couldn't do it. And so I thought, well, I guess then this is it. So then all of a sudden, it's like everything stopped, and I started reversing, and I came back. So my kids were a major part of my sobering.
And you hadn't even had them yet at that point, huh?
I haven't even had them yet.
You were just like, I need to have kids.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
It is.
That's a God thing.
Yeah. Gosh, that must have been some kind of trippy experience, like being on the doorpost of death.
Well, yeah. I know the last thing I remember was the artillery round came in, and I heard the guns go off, and I heard the round coming in, and it got louder and louder, and I thought, that sucker's going to land on the backside of my helmet. And it almost did. And so then all of a sudden, everything was black. It was dark. And I looked in, I stretched out my senses to find out if there was anything besides in the darkness. And I couldn't find anything. I couldn't sense anything. So then I gradually moved into, out of the darkness into a place that looked like a tunnel. And as I moved through the tunnel, I saw a greenish glow follow me on what would be the downside of this tunnel. And so I thought, that tunnel's pulling me. And I said, no, that's my life. That's my energy. That's me, So I started going faster and faster down there. And I went by a porthole that would look like there was water coming on the outside of it. And as the water drained off of this porthole, I saw myself standing as a kid with a bleeding Madras shirt on, which I don't know where that came from. And
I used to have those.
Yeah, I was across the street from our Catholic church. And I was confused, and I was scared, and I had compassion for that kid. And I thought, wow, So then I started going, and then gradually I came to the point where I said, I can't go yet. I have to have kids, and I was able to come back. And I felt, I know that it was real. because I felt, I said, it's really not too bad here. It's peaceful here, And I thought, do I really want to go back, And by then it was too late, and I felt myself re-enter my body. So I know it was an out-of-body experience. I felt, and it didn't hurt right away, but eventually it hurt.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Do you think that has helped to affirm your faith, knowing that there is something afterward? I mean, not many people get to know for sure that there is something after.
I know that there's something after death because I've been down at least part of that trail.
That's an interesting statement.
Yeah. I know it because I've experienced it.
And so are you afraid of dying today?
Oh, no. The only thing I want to do is I want to make sure that Louis got a good home.
Louis is dog.
Or that I can take, that I can at least find him a good place before I go.
Yeah. Well, we're hoping not to lose you anytime soon.
I don't plan on it, but who knows?
Who knows what's going to happen, right? Man, Joe, it's like it's an interesting journey, and it's been fun to get to know you more. I mean, we've talked many times before, but never really had the opportunity to actually just sit down and talk about who Joe is.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate this opportunity. And
me too.
I think that that the younger generation would benefit from listening to your story and comparing that to what's going on in the world today, and taking a little wisdom, because we live in dark times. So, did you have any last words that you wanted to say?
No, it's been, I thought, what was this interview going to be like? And I figured it'd be something like this. I thought, okay, this is me, So I'm just glad to be here. I'm glad to be in my ministry. And I couldn't find a better church, I don't think.
Amen. Yeah. Amen. Well, we certainly love having you.
Amen.
Greg, did you have any final thoughts?
When I realized we were going to be interviewing Joe, the only thing that came to my mind is we were out shooting one time, and we had our targets up, and he had his little timer going and everything, and we went through our little routine, boom, 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 drop the magazine, put a new one in, boom, 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 and I thought, this is fun. And then I watched Joe do it with his right hand. And then I watched Joe do it with his left hand. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh.
What I love about
amazing.
What I love about shooting with Joe is that he uses that single stack 1911. And it's like when he shoots with that thing, it like throws beer cans out the top of it. I mean, these shells coming out of this thing, you're like, you could put your head in these things.
And they're hot.
Yeah.
Don't let them land on you.
That was the weapon they carried in Vietnam.
Yeah.
So we go back a few years.
Yeah. Just that kind of thing. Well, Joe, man, thank you so much for being with us, man. I really appreciate it. And really appreciate you sharing your story with us. And hopefully somebody can hear this and it'll at least trigger some kind of thoughts in their heads as to, thinking about life and how precious that life is. I mean, it's like I'm only approaching 50. So I'm the young buck in the room, sadly. But it's like you get to a certain point and then you look back, you look ahead and you think, well, I've got less years ahead of me than I've got behind me.
And the thing that impresses me most about being right here is that you're one breath away from eternity.
Mm-hmm. That's amazing.
One breath away from eternity.
That's such a great way of looking at it too, especially coming from your circumstance where you've had that experience where it's like, okay, I know for a fact that there's something beyond here because I have walked part way down that pathway.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I think that's really encouraging. Somebody could probably draw a lot of exhortation from that statement, because I think a lot of people, Christians, have a fear of death.
Yeah.
And especially as you get farther down the road, you look at, like, well, how many more years do I actually have left, and how many can I enjoy, and I think people really think about that. And so, I think if you just look back and you think, wow, look at all that I have accomplished, even the negative things, all of those things have impacted not just myself, but have impacted people around me.
I needed to do all the negative stuff to be where I am today.
Yeah. And here you are.
And here I am.
And you're our dear friend and our compatriot. And, we are so blessed to have guys like you in our community that we can learn from. Amen. We really are. And I really appreciate it. Yeah. Well, that about does it for us today. As always, thank you for joining us. If you enjoyed this episode, please give it a like, share it with your friends, subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. Your support really helps us to get our message of biblical philosophy out. Thanks to Ken and Greg and Gavin for helping to produce this episode. Also, thanks to Joe for being here with us today. It was a great privilege. Thanks to ABC and its members for their generous support of this ministry. And again, thank you for listening. And until next time, remember, be brave, be bold, be loud. You can be a force for biblical morality in your world. Don't wait. Don't be silent. And for heaven's sake, don't give up. And with that, we are out.